Hi everyone, welcome back to Baking with Miss Manzo. Today we have a new recipe that we're going to be making. It's a no-bake Funfetti Oreo birthday cake cheesecake. Being that July in my life, I have so many family members and friends whose birthdays are in July. I thought that was a really fun theme and something that we can do. So if you have someone whose birthday is coming up, you may want to make this at your house. So what we're going to do, there's a couple steps with this. We have to make the crust, then we'll make the filling, and then we're going to make the topping. So because there's three different steps, we're going to kind of do all three steps separately. Not everything that we need throughout the entire recipe is right here in front of us. So the first thing I want to go over are some of the ingredients that we're going to use for our crust, and then, as always, we're going to go wash our hands. So for our crust for this no-bake Funfetti Oreo birthday cake cheesecake, we need to use birthday cake Oreos. Now, I know that they make golden Oreos, which is the vanilla kind with the birthday cake cream, but a lot of people in my life prefer chocolate, so we're going to do this one. But you have the option to use either one. Then it calls for rainbow sprinkles, okay, and a quarter or 1/4 cup of melted butter. And that's actually in the microwave. We're going to be melting that in a little while. As for the cooking supplies that we need for the crust right now, we have our spring form pan that's back, okay, with the buckle where you unbuckle it and then the bottom stays. So we're going to be preparing the crust in this pan. And then we have something that's called a food processor. And what this is electronic and it has tiny blades inside. So what this is going to do is this is going to produce our crumbs. We're going to be putting our Oreos inside there and we're going to hit the chop button and it makes it into like almost like sand, like crust, the crumbs. So that is the first steps. We have the ingredients and the cooking supplies that we need for our crust. But first, we're going to head over to the sink to wash our hands. So we know, as always, we want to make sure that we wash our hands really clean before preparing or handling any type of food when we're in the kitchen. So we're going to turn water on. Good soap. Tops and bottoms, in between your fingers, tops of your hands. Make sure you get it all nice and clean. Now we're ready to bake that no-bake cheesecake. So while our butter is melting in the microwave, we're going to use our food processor and we're going to add the different Oreos, the Funfetti Oreos, or the birthday cake Oreos into our food processor to make those crumbs. So this recipe calls for about 15 of those birthday cake Oreos. So we're not going to put all 15 in at once. We're going to put, I would say maybe 5, because this is a mini food processor. So it's going to take a couple rounds to get those crumbs. And then what's going to happen is as we make this, we're going to mix it with the melted butter so that it forms our crust. So I'm going to lock it into place. It's kind of similar to our standalone mixer. You're going to I like to put my hand on top just so that it stays nice and secure. And then you can either press chop or grind. And sometimes once it's made into that crumb, it'll start making a weird noise. So we want to make sure that we don't over mix because then the motor will become an issue. So now again, this blade inside is very sharp. So when you go to clean it later, you need an adult present because it's sharper than a knife. So you have to be very careful with that. Okay, so it looks like our first batch is done, and I think our melted butter is ready also. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the melted butter over, and we're going to transport these new pieces of cookies, which are now crust, or the crumbs, and we're going to put it into the melted butter to start that crust. So if you notice, the butter is melted. It's now completely liquid. I'm going to move these out of the way, down, and then I'm just going to makes a little bit of a mess, so we just have to be careful. We're going to take it out. I like to hold this piece inside so that the blades don't come out, and I'm going to just dump it inside. Now remember, we're not done. We're going to add 5 more and then 5 more. So we're counting by 5s in order to get to our 15 total Oreos that we need for our crust. Count 5 more. 2, 4, 5. So just like before, we're going to lock the lid in on top, and we can chop and grind until it's super fine like we just saw before. So we're taking our last 5 cookies that we did. We did 5, 10, and now this is 15. And we are going to dump it into the bowl with the butter. See how sharp that blade is? You have to be super careful. And again, make sure that an adult is present. Now, I'm not going to clean this just yet because later our recipe calls to use the food processor again. So we're going to want to come back to that. Okay, so now I'm going to use my spatula, and we're going to kind of just carefully mix all these new crumbs, okay, in with the butter. And again, that is going to make the bottom layer of our crust, which we're going to press into the spring form pan that I showed you before. So right now, butter and Oreos. And you can see it's coming together very nicely. So now we're ready to put this in our spring form pan. So before we press it into the bottom of our spring form pan, it's important that we don't forget our rainbow sprinkles. Now the recipe calls for about 2 to 3 tablespoons of sprinkles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just unscrew the top like that. I have my tablespoon, okay? And again, your work surface is clean. So we're just kind of, and it doesn't have to be perfect because this is just to add more rainbow colors. I'm just going to use 2 because we're going to actually be using this again in the filling. Okay, so now we want to mix those sprinkles in with the crushed up Oreos. This is a pretty looking crust. It's your Oreo cookies, birthday cake Oreo cookies with some rainbow sprinkles. This is so cool. So guys, a lot of these recipes that I'm making with you here on our baking show, I've never made before. So I'm just as excited to try these as you guys are, I hope. So check it out. Okay, so it's our crushed Oreos with our melted butter and some rainbow sprinkles. Now, just as an extra precaution, what I like to do, yesterday we were using the parchment paper. What this just calls for is it just says to press it in here, but just to be safe, I'm going to put a little bit of my cooking spray in the bottom of it just so that when we go to cut it tomorrow, it's easy to do. Okay, so the way we do this is we are going to put it in the bottom. Okay, so you're going to carefully scoop this out of your bowl. And we're going to press it down with our spatula. And what you can also do is if you have a lot of the mixture here, instead of just pressing it down into the bottom of your springform pan, You can kind of push the excess batter along the side since your hands are clean. So I'm actually going to, and again, as I told you in our previous shows, you can have extra napkins or paper towels off to the side. I have some red, white, and blue stars just to make sure that your hands are clean. So I'm going to carefully press this, and I'll show you once I'm done what it looks like. I'm pressing it into the bottom of the pan, and it depends. If you want a really thick base layer at the bottom, that's totally up to you. But if you want to kind of bring it up to the sides, I'll show you what I mean by that so you know what it looks like. Okay, so you actually have the ability to go up the side a little bit. And you just want to use your fingers to kind of flatten it out so that it's even all the way around as best as possible. This smells really good. Okay. So now what's going to happen is, because this is still kind of warm from the butter being melted and the cookies are just turned into the crumbs, we're actually going to put this right into the refrigerator for a little bit to set. Okay, clean my hands off real quick, and I want to show you what this looks like. So check it out. So what I did, and it looks like a brownie almost, I just flattened it into the bottom of the springform pan, and I kind of went up the sides just a little bit, just so that it's not so thick on the bottom. So I'm going to go pop this into the refrigerator until it sets while we're making our filling. So now, while our crust is in the refrigerator firming up, we have to get ready on our filling. So what we have here again, we have our cooking supplies and materials, and we have the actual ingredients that we'll be using for the filling portion. Now, some things I already have prepared just to make things go a little bit smoother. Okay, so some things that we're going to be using. This is a big portion of it. Being that it is a cheesecake, we are going to be using cream cheese. Okay, so we have actually 3 blocks of cream cheese. Here is a math problem. So 1 block is 8 ounces. If I have 3 of them, I have 3 8-ounces of cream cheese. How many ounces is that? 24. So we have 8, 16, 24. So this has been sitting out at room temperature. We once saw a video on how to soften butter, cream cheese, okay? So these actually sat out for a little while just so that they're easier to deal with in the electric mixer. We're going to be mixing this with some sugar, granulated sugar, okay? Now, additionally, we have some more cookie crumbs from our birthday cake Oreos. We'll be using that. We have some vanilla extract. This is a cup of Funfetti cake mix. That's going to give it more of that birthday cake flavor. We'll be mixing that in there. We have our rainbow sprinkles, whipped topping, so Cool Whip, whatever brand you want to use is fine. We'll be using the entire 8-ounce tub. And then we have more of our birthday cake Oreos that we are going to chop. So it's going to be not as fine as the crumbs. It's going to be like chunks of it that we're going to be putting mixed into it. So what we need to do now is we need to head over to the mixer, and we're going to mix our cream cheese with the sugar to start the base of the filling. Okay, so we are ready to use our standalone mixer to mix our 24 ounces of cream cheese and half a cup of granulated sugar. I have my garbage can open so that I can unwrap each block of cream cheese and then just discard the garbage right away. I can open it. Okay. Nice and soft because it's been sitting out at room temperature, which is very good. Very easy to work with. We're just going to pop it right in the bowl. Discard the garbage. Move on to our second one. So we want this to be like, a smooth mixture of cream cheese. That's going to be the filling of our no bake cheesecake. Now the beauty of no bake means there's no oven involved. We just let it set in the refrigerator. Similar to our crust right now, we want to give the filling an opportunity to sit in the refrigerator so that it all combines nicely. Okay? Scoop it out. And third one. Now, once we have the 3 blocks of cream cheese in our mixing bowl, we're going to carefully measure out a half a cup of granulated sugar. That's going to make the cream cheese sweet like cheesecake. Okay. So, easy cleanup. Now, I have my sugar in this little canister. I have my half cup measuring cup. Now, again, we want it to be as level as possible. Sometimes people use knives to kind of just scrape the excess off. Okay, but if you look, it's right in line with the top. It's going to go right in the bowl. We're going to move this out of the way. Going to let this do all of the work for us. Lock it in place. We're going to start at a low speed. You don't want everything to splatter out. And then as it gets going, then we can go a little quicker. And you want that to mix together. So we're going to let that go for a little while, and then we're going to check on it to see if the filling is ready. So it's looking just about done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the speed off, unlock it. Okay, now if you look, there's some excess cream cheese still in the whisk. So because it's smooth, you can kind of just hit the whisk on the side of the bowl to get rid of the excess. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to our workstation and we're going to add some more ingredients to get that filling going. That way we can add it right on top of our crust that we have in the refrigerator. Okay, so our cream cheese filling is nice and smooth. So now we get to add all of our other ingredients inside to make the filling. Okay, the first thing we want to add is a teaspoon of vanilla extract. That's what really gives this mixture that cheesecake flavor. So I'm just going to carefully measure out a teaspoon. I'm going to drop it right in there. Now, in addition to that, I don't know if I said this before, but we have 2 tablespoons of milk that we're going to also add in, along with our cake mix. Okay, so we're going to give that a nice mixture. I need to actually grab a spoon. Okay, and we are going to carefully mix this all up by hand. Okay, so I'm mixing it up nicely so that all of those ingredients are combined well. Now, once we have that, we're going to want to fold in the whipped topping. Okay, we saw this in one of our recipes. Folding it, we just kind of take the spatula or spoon and we kind of just like carefully incorporate it into the mixture. So like I said before, this entire container is going to go inside. And I like to use the spatula because like we've seen in the past, it scrapes the bowl out entirely. Okay. So now I'm going to actually take this spoon out and use the spatula from here out. So now I'm going to fold in the whipped topping. And again, if you can notice, I'm just kind of taking it and looping it almost, just so that all combines nicely. This is going to make it really, really creamy. So then as it's in there, you want to make sure it's well incorporated, mixed up. Okay. Now, once that's all in there together, you may want to switch hands if your wrist gets tired, whatever you want to do. So once that's all in there nicely mixed, we have two more things we want to add, three, I'm sorry, including our sprinkles. Can't forget those sprinkles. We want to incorporate into this mixture. The first thing is the cup of crushed Oreos. So when I say crushed, it's when we use the food processor like before for the crust. These crumbs we're going to also use. So about a cup and a half. Okay, and we're going to add that in. Clean my hand off a little bit as we go. Okay, and then we're going to continue to mix this around so that all of these crumbs are in here. Then the leftover Oreos that we have from the container, depending on how many you want to use, you can use about 7 to 10. You're going to chop them roughly so they're like chunks of Oreos, and we're going to also put that in here. So when you go to take a bite of your cheesecake, you get a nice crunch of that Oreo in there. All right, so I want to just show you what this looks like so far. This man has got to keep going to the gym because I'm going to tell you, this mixing is a lot of work. All right, so just so you can see what this looks like, everything is nicely incorporated and mixed up. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you how you can carefully chop up the Oreos so we can add them in as well. Now again, we're using a knife, so you want to be very careful. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a couple of them, and you want to do about 7 to 10, depending on how many you want. I'm going to go for about 7. Okay, so what you're going to do, again, you're using a knife, so you want to be very careful, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, you can kind of just break it once, again, flat hand on top, and again, you always want an adult present, or you can even just break them with your fingers, and then you just throw them in. Cream will come out, but it'll all mix in together. It'll be great. So we're going to do that for the rest of them. So we have our last one. Again, it's just supposed to be chopped on even pieces. Throw them in. I'm going to bring this over to the sink just so we have more space to mix the last two things. Okay. So again, I'm just going to kind of mix that all up. I like to use the spatula because it just helps with mixing everything together. The things don't get really stuck like you would on a spoon. Mix it up. Now, the last thing calls for about 6 tablespoons of our rainbow sprinkles, just to give it some more color inside. Okay, so I'm going to get my tablespoon. And again, doesn't have to be perfect, so I'll do it over top of this so that I can just, if it falls in, it falls in. It's part of our recipe. Five. Last one. All right. So now, check it out before. So all of our sprinkles are in there. Our arm workout in again. And then we're just mixing it all up. This is looking so cool. So like I said before, if you wanted to use the golden Oreos, the birthday cake ones, that's fine too. Whatever you prefer. If you want to use chocolate sprinkles instead of rainbow, you guys, I told you before that cooking is like art. You can be creative and do it any way you want. So now, this is all mixed up. Whoops. We are ready to put that in the crust that has been setting in the refrigerator. So I'm going to grab that, and then we're going to be able to put this on top And then we're going to put it back in the refrigerator until tomorrow when we want to add our topping. So we have our crust. It's all nice and firm, but the longer you let it sit in the refrigerator, the more firm it will be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this now and I'm going to just put it right on top of our crust. This is our filling that we just worked on. Okay, and again, I'm using that same spatula. Whoops. To the side. Now what we get to do with the spatula, and again, this is a nice way also that I like using the spatula is because it's a flat top. We just kind of mush it around until it's approximately the same height all the way around the circle of our springform pan. And the reason we do this in a springform pan is because what happens is right now this is soft, the mixture, the filling. But what will happen is as it sits in the refrigerator, it'll get a little bit more firm, just like the crust did. And then what will happen is when you're ready to serve it, you'll be able to unbuckle it and then the bottom stays and we just remove the top. So we'll see that. But I like to refrigerate this overnight just so that it sets up really nicely. And then what we'll do is while it's doing its job in the refrigerator, we're going to make the whipped topping that goes on top of it. And it'll be ready to eat because it does not have to bake. It just refrigerates and sets up for a little while. So you want to refrigerate this for approximately 4 to 5 hours or overnight, so that it sets up nicely. So now that this is all nicely spread out over the top, I'm going to go pop it in the refrigerator so it can refrigerate overnight. And then we have a nice cheesecake in the morning. Now we get to prepare our whipped topping. Hi everyone, welcome back. Now, our no-bake cheesecake is still firming up in the refrigerator. While we're doing that, we want to make our whipped topping. We have some experience with this from when we did the strawberry shortcake lasagna, so it's going to look very similar. The ingredients are going to be similar. The only difference is this time I'm going to be adding some vanilla extract to our mixture. So it calls for 3/4 or 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. Heavy whipping cream. So I'm going to use my measuring cup here. And if you look right here, 3/4 of a cup is right about there. So I'm going to put it flat on the counter just so that when I'm measuring my liquid, it's super even. Again, you get on eye level to make sure it's nice and even. And we have our 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. So I'm going to pour that inside of my mixing bowl. Okay. Now, I already measured it out, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. That goes right inside also. Then it calls for 6 tablespoons of confectioner sugar or powdered sugar. So we're going to get our tablespoon and we're going to measure out 6. Now remember I told you the other day that I use, you can't really see it, but I use the bag to kind of even out your tablespoons. 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So all of our ingredients are in here to make our whipped cream topping. So as always, we're going to lock it in place. And the recipe says that we should beat this on high speed so that stiff forms peak. And we've seen a video on this, and I'll also include this at the end of the baking show just to give you a reminder what stiff peaks looks like. But we want to make sure right now it's all liquid. We we want to make sure that it comes together to form whipped cream. So I'm going to put this on, and I think about 5 minutes or so, we will have our stiff peaks and our whipped cream will be ready to spread on top of our no-bake cheesecake. So again, you want to start out slow just so that the powdered sugar doesn't fly out of your mixer. And then once a good amount of it is combined, you can turn the speed up to a high speed, and it'll start forming those stiff peaks. So again, I'm going to set the timer for about 5 minutes, and we're going to check back on it to see how it goes. So our whipped cream is starting to look really good. The timer's got about 2 seconds left. Okay, so we're going to stop this. Now remember, we say sometimes whatever we're mixing may be stuck on the whisk. You just kind of tap it on the side and then drop it in the sink. So if you look inside, you can see that the consistency of our once heavy cream is now like a whipping cream. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to our workstation, and we are going to be able to spread this on top of the no-bake cheesecake that has been refrigerating overnight. Okay, so we have our whipped cream. I took our no-bake cheesecake out of the refrigerator. If you look, you can't really tell too much, but this has completely set up and is totally ready to be topped with whipped cream and then sliced to try. So what we have is I'm using my rubber spatula because it makes spreading a lot easier. And I'm just going to take my whipped cream and I'm going to put it on top of my no-bake cheesecake. So again, you kind of spread it around the top as evenly as possible. And that is going to give you like your icing. So now we talked about a springform pan a couple times now. The springform pan allows you to unclip, and then the bottom will stay, and then this round portion that's around it will come off. And it's almost like it's already on a plate for us. Okay. Oops. Perfect. So we are ready now. The last thing that I like to do, and again, because we said that baking is similar to art where you can be creative and do your own personal touch on it. If you had extra birthday cake Oreos, you can crush them up, put them on the top. If you want to make more crumbs in your food processor, you can do that also. If you have rainbow sprinkles, you can put that on there. So you can do whatever type of variation of the topping that you want. For me, I'm just going to put some of our rainbow sprinkles on top just to give it some color, make it pretty. So now again, this isn't birthday cake, no bake cheesecake, but this doesn't mean that you have to only eat this on birthdays. Just saying that because that's the flavor of it, and with the whipped cream and the sprinkles, it gives it that look. So we have our whipped topping is set. Now comes the fun part and sometimes tricky part. We have to take our springform pan off. So I'm going to unclip it, and then you may have to like hit the bottom a couple times just to loosen it up. For some reason, oh, there it goes. Hold on. Ooh, look. Ta-da! Check that out. I'm going to put this in the sink real quick. Whew. So, what I like to do, being that this is on the bottom piece of your springform pan, is I'll just put this on a plain white plate. Sometimes I may use a pie stand like I showed you in our milk and cookies recipe, but this is what we have. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to just cut a slice so we can see what it looks like. And obviously I'm going to have a little bite. And then this is coming with me. I'm going to my friend Gina's today. Bring it for my friends to try. And again, you can cut whatever size piece you want. A lot of cookie crusts on the ends. So I'm going to cut it. I have my little pie server. Now the first piece is always a little tricky to get out. So it may not look pretty, but you get the idea. All right, not too bad. Not too bad. So look, we have our slice. We have the crust at the bottom from yesterday. My hands are a little messy. I have my paper towel nearby. Now, let's try. Wow, look at that. There is a piece of Oreo in there. Look how good. Let's see. So good. I really hope you guys make this because this is amazing. It's nice and cool for the summer. Can't really see the inside, but you have some pieces of Oreo in there. It's a beautiful dessert and it tastes delicious. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you be your own food critic at the end. You can rate my presentation if you didn't make it on your own. And that's all. I'll see you on the next show. Have a good one. Bye. Okay, boys and girls, we're going to watch a video on how to whip cream, how to get those stiff peaks when making whipped cream. going to be very happy with it. So make sure that you circle which one best fits the different category. Great job today. I hope you enjoyed. See you on the next video.